Okay, pirates, welcome to our video on flight, our EdPuzzle for the week. Let's take a look at some of the forces that involved in flight. So you're going to see a video on this. I'm going to show you some examples of the Wright brothers, the guys who flew the first airplane, and also an amazing person called Charles Lindbergh who flew the first flight across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm going to show you his actual plane and his story. And then, of course, unveil the prize. So if we look at a plane here, we have four things acting on the plane. First of all, of course, you guys know gravity. The weight of the plane and the density of the plane is going to be pulling the plane down. And then drag. Sometimes they put the drag arrow on this end, sometimes they put it on this end. But you just have to look at the direction arrow. So if you look at drag, that would be the wind that's pushing against it. And that is also why it's shaped like this, though, because it's called aerodynamic. So this is aerodynamic because when wind hits this, it bounces easily up and above it, okay, because it's a rounded shape. Now, if this nose cone was like this, it would really slow it down and not be efficient. So that's why it's kind of curved like that. And of course, we learned the wing. The wing is the most important part because it is shaped like it is in a teardrop fashion. That is why the air travels faster under it than it does over it, which creates lift. So as long as this is moving forward because of the thrust, right? So we have the jet engine shooting out energy this way. It's going to keep it going forward. The air is going to go faster around this and create lift, and that's how we can get a plane that weighs so much up in the air. So let's watch a video now on that, learn a little bit more how that works.
How is a plane, which can weigh hundreds of thousands of pounds, able to escape the force of gravity to soar seemingly effortlessly through the sky? How do planes like these ever get off the ground and stay there? Arthur C. Clarke once famously said,
"Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic."
This may have been the case regarding flight many years ago. But as we will explain, the magic of flight is easily explained through the scientific discoveries of a couple of guys named Bernoulli
It's not magic.
and Newton.
It's science.
We need to first talk about air. Air is made up of molecules, and the weight of these air molecules acting on an object is what we call air pressure. Bernoulli discovered a principle about air and other types of fluids in motion. He discovered that as a fluid, in our case air, increases in speed, its pressure decreases. Picture yourself holding the end of a piece of paper just under your lip. If you were to blow out across the paper will rise. Two things are happening that cause the paper to rise. First, as Bernoulli stated, as you blow, the speed of the air along the top of the paper increases. This increase in speed causes the air pressure to decrease. Second, because there is now greater pressure below the paper than above it, that pressure pushes the paper up. So how does this explain how an airplane flies? Because Bernoulli's principle applies in any situation in which the air is moving. In flight, air is moving over the top and bottom of the wings. What makes the wing especially effective for flight is its shape. It is shaped like an airfoil with a curve along the top. As wind passes over this curve, it speeds up. The wind speed under the wing stays the same. Remember that Bernoulli's principle states that the faster the air is moving, the less pressure it has. This means that the pressure under the wing is now greater than the pressure above the wing. That greater pressure essentially pushes the wing and thus the aircraft up. This force is called lift. So we've been talking about lift. What about gravity? How does lift overcome the weight of the plane? In order for a plane to have enough lift, it must create its own wind by moving forward fast enough for sufficient airflow across the wings. This forward force is called thrust. This thrust is created by the engine and propeller in our example. The propeller itself is an airfoil, just like a wing. And just like the wing, It produces lift from air that moves across the upper and lower edges of it. However, since these edges are oriented vertically as opposed to horizontally like the wing, the lift that is produced propels the aircraft forward. As the plane moves forward, the wind that is created is called relative wind. The last force we need to discuss is drag. Drag is the resistance of a plane to move through the air caused by the friction of the air on the aircraft. This resistance must be overcome by the thrust of the propeller. So, here's how this all works together to create flight. The aircraft propeller produces thrust. This thrust moves the plane forward, creating relative wind across the wings. The wind also creates drag on the aircraft, which must be overcome by the thrust. As the plane accelerates, the relative wind across the wing creates an area of low pressure along the top of the wing. The faster the plane goes, the lower the pressure above the wing, which allows the higher pressure under the wing to lift the aircraft. These same forces apply to all aircraft, regardless of size.
I thought the visuals in that video were great. It really shows you how that works. So now let's go to the first flight and learn a little bit about the Wright brothers. Here we go. 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
In Dayton, Ohio, both brothers were pioneers credited with inventing the first airplane. In late 1901, the Wright brothers had gathered the aerodynamic data they needed to build a successful flying machine, and in 1902, the Wright brothers had built their latest glider based on this data. They had identified a wing shape that was efficient, producing the expected lift, and engineered controls that were responsive. The glider would also use a trailing rudder for yaw, therefore enabling the Wright brothers to navigate in the air in all 3 dimensions. Following this success, the next stage for the brothers was powered flight. No manufacturers could provide an engine light enough and powerful enough for their needs, so the brothers had to design and build their own. The Flyer was designed in a biplane configuration with a wooden airframe and a wingspan of 12.3 meters or 40 feet 4 inches. The pilot flew on his stomach on the lower wing, steering by moving a cradle attached to his hips. This cradle pulled wires which warped the wings and turned the rudder. The Wright Flyer 1, based on the previous glider, was set up near Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, in the United States of America on December 17, 1903, where there was a hill and a good breeze. The first flight lasted 12 seconds. Traveling 36 meters or 120 feet with Orville piloting. 3 more flights were made on that day, with Wilbur achieving the best flight, covering 255.6 meters or 852 feet in 59 seconds. The Wright brothers had made history with the first successful flight of a controllable, self-propelled, heavier-than-air machine. Over the next few years, the Wright brothers developed new flyers while remaining secretive in an attempt to secure patents and contracts. Subscribe for more history videos.
Okay, so there's our Wright brothers. And then last year I was in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian, like I told you guys. And I got to see the real Wright Flyer. So if I can go to photos here. Not this one. Give me 1 second. I'll find it. It's a 40-second video. It's right here.
And here is the actual first airplane ever created.
The real actual thing.
The Wright brothers flew it. Kitty Hawk, 1903. First humans to ever fly right there. That's what it looked like. Imagine they laid like that. Started on a hill and ran down. I'm sure we'll show you the video of it. Kind of amazing to see the actual thing. First airplane. From that in 1903 to 100 years later, and imagine what we can do now. We're trying to get to Mars. That's crazy innovation.
So in only 100 years. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show you guys is the story of Charles Lindbergh. So this is another short video. If you give me a second, I gotta find it on YouTube here. Go back to my YouTube, and let me just scroll down here. Charles Lindbergh here.
Space Museum. It
National Air and Space Museum. Tonight we are lowering the Spirit of St. Louis to the floor of the Boeing Milestones of Flight Gallery. And it will give our visitors a wonderful opportunity to see this remarkable aircraft up close in a way that normally they will not have a chance to. So it's a very rare opportunity. The Spirit of St. Louis is one of our most significant artifacts. It is the aircraft which Charles Lindbergh became the first person to fly nonstop solo across the Atlantic Ocean in 1927. And that flight really set the world on fire. Lindbergh flew his Spirit of St. Louis from New York to Paris, a distance of 3,610 miles in 33 and a half hours. It was very, very hazardous because he did it by himself. There was no communications at that time to speak of. And if he ever went down, he would have gone down in the middle of the North Atlantic. It's the fact that one man did it by himself, non-stop, really struck a chord with the nation and frankly with the world. We got the plane in 1928, and since then it's been suspended in either the Arts and Industries building or here in our National Air and Space Museum. The work on the aircraft is part of the refurbishment of our Boeing Milestones of Flight Hall, which is due to be completed in 2016. While the aircraft will be on the floor, it will be looked at by our conservators and restoration technicians just to make sure the airplane.
Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys where I got to actually see it. And I want to point out something pretty crazy about it. Oh boy. I got to go back a year. I just messed up, sorry. Let me scroll this to June of last year. Oh boy, here we go. Just messed up, sorry, be patient. I do really want to show you my video of it. So there it is, late June. Okay, right here. So what I want you to notice about this airplane is it had no windows. So as he flew, he had to stick his head out the side of the window and look, because he couldn't have windows because it wasn't efficient enough. Also, he had to stay awake for all 33 hours and a half hours because he couldn't fall asleep or the plane would crash. There was no automatic pilot or anything like that. And most of the plane was filled with gas.
Here's another view of the Spirit of St. Louis. Took Lindenberg 33 and a half hours.
That's the actual plane.
Travel across the Atlantic Ocean from Long Island, New York to Paris, France. He had no front windows. He flew solo all by himself. To get navigation, he'd have to turn the plane sideways and try to look out the side windows to know where he was going. Imagine not even being able to see and just having to read the instruments as you fly across the Atlantic Ocean. 6 people had tried before him to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean and all died.
So the previous 6 people who had tried to do what he did all died. So he was super brave, knowing that that he was probably going to die trying to do this. Yet he still was brave enough to do it.
It was amazing bravery and flying in this. If you were here to see this little plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, you'd be amazed to think that you'd be in there in 33 and a half hours not knowing if you're going to live or die. And only having one engine on the front, that thing cuts out and you're diving into the Atlantic Ocean, sure to die in the freezing waters. Amazing.
So amazing. All right, last thing that I want to show you guys, if you don't mind, is I want to show you your prize for the week. So let me go back to YouTube. Your prize for this week is right here.
What makes a business a business?
So you might be wondering, what is that? All I see is a paper airplane flying in the air. But your question should be, how is it staying in the air? And the answer is right there. So if you win this week, it is actually, you make your own paper airplane and you attach this to it, and it has a propeller on it that will keep it flying in the air. So that is the prize for this week. So hopefully you learned a little bit about flight and enjoyed the video. Hope to see you guys Wednesday night at Freedom Park, because the treasure hunt will be on.